If you manage teams, you should be using
Sorry,
Monday.
guys.
How'd you do that?
It's a platform to manage any team.
Sorry. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Buddhist Biohacker. Sorry for my little technical blip. I'm Lisa Gunshore. I am your host, and I am beyond excited. You guys can see everyone here together. Tonight is the night we've been waiting for, which is the Divine Masculine Roundtable. And a few weeks ago, we did a roundtable with the Divine Feminine that was so powerful. And I thought, well, we have to do the Divine Masculine as well. And I am just honored by these 5 men being brave and coming and talking about this. And all of them are key players in their own worlds and in their own inherent gifts and talents. And I'm just beyond excited. And I'm only going to be here for mere moments, but I see a lot of you guys already joining in the live. I see that live feed clicking up. So welcome everybody who's watching live. Now, I'm going to moderate the live chat while all of these incredible men are talking. So if you guys have questions, comments, shares, stories, we love it. Please, please, please write that in the live chat. And otherwise, just sit back and enjoy the conversation and welcome. And click subscribe, by the way, if you haven't done that too. We love that as well. And I'm going to start out, I'm going to have each one of you guys just introduce yourselves and share a little bit about who you are. And then my lovely husband, Scott, is going to take over moderating this particular podcast. So thank you, everybody. And why don't we start with you, Donnie, and you could just share who you are, and then you guys can kind of go in whatever roundtable you want to here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for having me on. I always look forward to this sort of experience. Down and dirty, my name is Donnie Dust. I am a wilderness self-reliance educator out in Boulder, Colorado. And I'm also a primitive skills practitioner. So I kind of take ancient technologies and apply them today for kind of the masses to enjoy, kind of reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with an ancient past. So you can, for the most part, live a little bit more freely, a little bit more wildly. And, you know, life is long, so you enjoy it as much as you can.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Ted.
My name's Ted Morris. I was a therapist for 15 years. I worked primarily with convicted sex offenders for 11 of those years. I've seen a lot of examples of manhood gone wrong, to say the least. And I've been looking forward to being on this panel for about a month now. So I'm happy to be here with you gentlemen. I think it's going to be a good night.
Cool. Satyam.
Okay, welcome. Namaskar, everyone. I'm a yoga practitioner, a spiritual aspirant. Have been involved in leading a yogic lifestyle for the last 3 decades or so. And it's always a work in progress. You always try and refine and incorporate new practices, everything from diet to meditation to yoga postures and all of its applications to the world. I teach a lot of yoga classes and meditation classes. And like everyone else, it's been really one of the nice new things that came with the pandemic is hooking up with Lisa Gunshore and the Buddhist Biohacker and being part of this podcast series. And it's great to be here with all you fine gentlemen.
Great, thank you. Marcus.
Yes, hi. My name is Marcus Harris from Grand Junction, Colorado. Pretty much grew up all my life playing sports. Played football up at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Donnie, we have that connection.
Yeah, right on.
Go Buffs. And I was blessed to be able to play 5 years with the San Diego Chargers and a year with the 49ers. Ended up having back surgery and had to retire. So moved back to Colorado in 2010, 2011. And I've started my new journey, which is life after sports. And it's been amazing. Have 5 beautiful, amazing kids, a wife, and currently involved in real estate, developing, work with buyers and sellers. And a big part of my work also is the new spiritual journey. So excited to talk about that tonight as well.
Excellent. I'll wrap with me. I'm Scott Gunshore, Lisa's amazing husband. And,
Yes.
We have 4 kids, and I've been working in the aerospace and defense industry for I think about 23 years, been a drummer for, I think like 30 years. So yeah, I'm maybe older than I look. But I've heard or been part of conversations with all of you to some degree. So I'm very happy to be here. And I know the caliber of individuals I have in front of me. So I'm excited to get this started, talk to you guys. So
Awesome.
I have some questions. I'll probably jump around. If you guys want to weigh in, just jump in. I think we'll let it flow, see how it goes.
Solid.
Yeah. So let's start with kind of a broad question, which is define the divine masculine. And let's start with Ted.
All right, I'll tell you what, I'll answer that question, partially because I expected you to ask it, but I'll tell you how I'll answer that question. I have a lot of examples of what the divine masculine is not. I grew up with a lot of bad examples of what it is not. And I found a large part of my adult life, kind of had to relearn what it should be. It's largely why I became a therapist. That was back in 2001, because I realized as far as communication especially goes, man, we don't always do it so well, and that's communicating with each other or communicating with our significant others or what have you. The divine masculine, in essence, I think it should be a positive leader, or what I would define as a positive leader. You're there to help rather than to harm. You're there to help, as in give somebody a hand up rather than kicking them down.
All right.
You bet.
Marcus, how about you?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Ted. You know, I was thinking about that question before we started the show, and for me, it's actually easier to talk about what it's not. Obviously, you know, growing up as a male, growing up in the sporting world and a sporting community, for me, it was just a lot of stereotypes. You know, kind of the way I look at it is there's two sides to that question. Number one, for me personally, being a male, and number two, being an athlete. And so now I'm looking back, and like I said, I'm on this new journey, and just thinking about old programming. And the first thing that comes to mind is, you know, did those old ways serve me? And they did, because I was an athlete. But the negative for me now is, you know, as a man, you're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to show emotion. You know, no one really taught me at a young age that as a man, those things are okay. And so, like I said, when I was playing football, when I was on the field, when I was out hitting and tackling other men, that was more than okay, right? Because obviously you're not thinking about your feelings and emotions and, you know, communicating. And so again, looking back over my past, again, that did serve me. But now, like I talked about, my life after football, as a father, as a husband, I'm actually reprogramming all those negative stereotypes, because today they don't serve me. And now it's super important for me to actually tweak and change those old ways, right? Because if I don't, I'm just going to pass those on to my kids, and they're never going to break that cycle. So for me, it's, again, when I talk about my journey and, you know, looking back over my past, you know, similar to Ted, it was a lot of negatives, you know. And so the best part now is I'm actually aware, and I can see where that did serve me and where it doesn't today. And now I'm working on, you know, changing those things, you know, going forward.
So hold some of those thoughts, because I think you hit on a couple topics I want to talk about in a little bit here, about the programming, about what you see and what you grow up through, and how you shift that. So appreciate those insights.
Absolutely.
How about you, Satyam?
Yeah, thanks. In the yogic ideal, one of the first questions, in fact, the very first question of yoga is, who am I? That initial question started the entire yogic spiritual journey thousands of years ago. Who am I, and what is my relation with this cosmos, with this entire world around me? And embracing the divinity within is a recalculation. It's the antithesis of the current model that's defining society, which is materialism, where I've come into this world, I should accumulate physical objects, and I should dominate. And that I can manipulate those things in any way I see fit. And it's an ego-driven approach. And it's led to horrific ecological devastation, the destruction of our human family, and our loss of our spiritual journey, because the mind became so extroverted, it forgot that there's an inner world. And so as human beings, our job is to, whatever we do externally, there should be equal endeavor within to awaken that subtle sense of spiritual purpose that we all have, that's inherent to being human. And rather than covering up with the busyness of life and thinking, oh, I'm doing so much, I'm busy, 24/7 busy. Busy doing what? Forgetting, neglecting of who we really are? So we have to look within to embrace that and to realize that every entity we interact with and every expression in this cosmos also has their inherent existential value and is deserving of respect, dignity, and the right to be here without being exploited. That goes for women, it goes for children, it goes for animals, it goes for the ecosystem, everything. And so that's an entirely radical shift from the way anyone in the good old USA, well, I can't say anyone, but the dominant culture has been the opposite of that. Now there are groups and there are movements that are shifting away from that, but the overall imprint is it's something that we're struggling with, and hopefully I think we're repositioning ourselves little by little. But in a overview or a nutshell, whatever that was, that would be my perspective on it.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. All right, Donnie, that
Yeah.
top that one, right?
Yeah. So I think when I think of divine masculinity, I think of it more of a balance in life. I don't think I could really attribute it to a specific moment in time for me, or even through societies and cultures past, because it changes. Every millennia, every decade, it's always changing. It's based on the current situation, what the world presents itself, and how the divine masculine kind of reacts to it. So for me, I come from a military background. I was in the United States Marine Corps for 12 years. There's no organization on this planet that is more masculine and ready to fight in wars for the preservation of all societies. But there's no organization that is more understanding and compassionate and willing to lay their own personal life on the line for someone they've never met. To go over to a foreign land with certain ideas in place, under orders, under strict obligations, but willing to give it all up for someone that you've never met. For me, I believe having a masculine background is not defined by single actions. I have a mother and a father. My mother taught me how to sew, cook, clean, do all of these stereotypical, feminine roles and responsibilities. But I also hunt. I harvest my own food. I take care of my kids. There's a lot of things that evolve over time that could really determine what is divine masculinity. I don't think, me personally, I want to label it as one. I would just like to call it many days, sort of like what Marcus is saying, life's journey. It's a journey of continuous action that defines who we are daily. It changes. We're not the same person we were when we were younger. That masculinity has changed, maybe more of an understanding and appreciation for the world on a large scale. So I'm living that today. I don't want to kind of, put a single label on it and then try to define it or even really kind of are you yay or nay for it. But I just want to know, my viewpoint is that it's ever evolving and it's us accepting that evolution of who we are culturally, spiritually, individually. It's just ever changing. So in the grand scheme, it's life's journey. That's why, I live by that saying because it's always changing. And I know tomorrow I could wake up, my youngest son could be sick, and my divine masculinity might turn into more of a nurturing role, just as a father, as a caregiver, as someone who loves his son. So 4 hours from now, it could be totally different as he's trying to ride his bike down the road and he, scrapes his knee or he jumps off a ramp or something like that. It's ever changing. So without labeling it as a single point, it's just an ever changing, evolution of who we are, especially as men.
That's great. So I think we covered a lot of ground there, and really different input. So as a whole, I don't know that I'd add anything to it, but I will say that in thinking about it, there's an aspect of balance, right? Because we talk about masculinity and obviously the yin to the yang, or femininity. So there's this aspect of balance and understanding how that balance plays out, because masculinity isn't necessarily always what you might think as masculine or male. Same with feminine qualities. And it's how do you balance that? And Donnie hit on a good point. It's ever changing. So it's about interacting, and it's about interacting in a positive way. So that's, I think, what we're here for, to talk about is the positivity. So that leads me to my next question, which is, we all 5 of us, I'm sure, have many, many examples of exposure to toxic masculinity or a toxic environment. How do you detox to keep that masculinity positive, to keep the energy clean and the vibration high? Let me start with Marcus.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do want to hit on what Donnie said in terms of ever changing. I think that was amazing, because when he said that, I'm thinking about, my time as a child, going into high school, going into college, going into, the NFL, and then even life after sports. And it really is an amazing statement, because, every one of those chapters has been definitely ever changing. And so, Donnie, I just appreciate you pointing that out. But for the question, it's hard to say. How do I want to put it? Now, like I said, it's been a huge change and a huge shift after football. And for me, the positives and what I've been able to do is I've gotten into TM meditation. And for me, like we were talking about before, as a man, we go 100 miles an hour, and it's, all work and play. And I've really been able to slow down through the practice of meditation. And I was introduced in 2017, and it's been amazing, and that's one of the ways that I've been able to, focus and slow down. And I'll add some more things to that, but I would just start with meditation for me.
Okay. How about you, Ted?
For me, it was, I really got into martial arts right about 22. And even right up until COVID hit, I'm 51 now, even until COVID hit, I was big into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I found just doing positive stuff with other men has been very helpful. You're still doing competitive stuff, but you're also helping each other improve. So it becomes very, I don't want to say tribe-like, but it is almost like that. You're helping your brother out is what you're doing. You're helping each other improve, and you're also just working a lot of stuff out in a competitive environment without anyone getting seriously injured. And that's been a big issue for me, because I'd work with felons for 8 or 10 hours a day and have to come home and be normal. And, I'd need something in between leaving the office and going straight home. And that, some kind of martial arts practice like that was a big deal to me. I've started and stopped meditation at least 50 times. I'm doing a lot better with that now. And it has made a big difference. But for me, it was just doing a lot of positive things with other guys with similar backgrounds and just helping each other work it out.
Okay. Donnie.
Yeah. So great question. And I think for me personally, it was more of an acceptance that these things happen. Those environments will exist, but the only thing I can truly control is my response to it. So my response is more of a reflective response. And what I mean by that is the natural world, nature, I always call it the bush, is my go-to place. It is my place to reconnect, realign myself, ground myself, center myself in the most natural, authentic way possible. So if I ever found myself in those environments, accepting that they do exist and understanding my response, I would just immerse myself in the natural world. And that goes beyond going for a hike. It goes into stripping myself naked, submerging myself in mud or water, sleeping next to a campfire in a cave, maybe laying on some animal hides, just truly removing everything in that situation, in that environment, and trying to grasp a better understanding onto it. Identifying it and saying, what is my response? Is it one of action to prevent and maybe overcome through some sort of action of my own, or is it to accept and try to move on through some sort of resiliency method? But yeah, for me, it's always been the natural world, whether it's been a desert, an Arctic environment, a jungle, the high mountains of Colorado. When I need that little bit of escape, when I need that source of meditation, I don't really follow a specific type of meditation, but more of one of just reflection in the natural world. And I think things reveal themselves to me in that capacity. So
cool.
Yeah.
Satyam.
Sure. Great question, and very much appreciate what everybody's had to share thus far, and respect and honor those experiences and words. There's a word in Sanskrit known as satsang, and sat means, it basically means good company. That company which helps you move towards a more subtle place in life. And to whatever degree that we have the ability to, I understand we may not always have that ability, but to whatever degree we can avoid that toxic environment, we should avoid it. For instance, you know, walking into a bar at 1 a.m., that may not be the best place to be. And if you can avoid that, then by all means do so. The yogis also believe in that there's a collective, and ultimately we can't let anyone drift away. But you should only enter that toxic environment when you have your brothers with you to change that environment in a positive way. And so some people with a very strong mind are able to go in and change that vibration and attract other people towards them and get people to change their own habits. And so you always have to calculate, where am I in this situation? Can I go into this environment and positively change it without losing what I've been striving for? Or do I need to just maybe hold off here, take a little retreat and go and rejuvenate myself and see when I can interact? So it's a constant endeavor to adjust and to evaluate where we can best serve ourselves, but always try and be in a position where you and those around you can work towards a path of refinement.
Very nice. Very nice.
So I'll weigh in too with, for me, you know, a lot of, I think the day for any man who's trying to support a family or significant others, or even just themselves, there's this expectation of production, right? You need to produce, and there's always that pressure to produce. And so what I've found is, aside from production, very helpful thing is creation, right? To engage the mind, to create and to bring something into this world that, you know, or is from your own unique gifts and talents, right? There's 5 very different personalities here right now talking, and all 5 of us have the ability to create things, and we do. So that's an aspect that I try to keep front of mind in the course of the day and the course of the week, is to take the opportunity to create, even if it's just new ideas or a vision of your path forward. You know, I'm a drummer, so it's fun to go down in the basement and bash on my drums, right? There's a physical element to that. There's an energy release to it, but also the creation of the piece of music or the rhythm and interacting with other individuals to bring that forth is very important, I think. and very helpful. So this opportunity, you know, comes up, and it's easy to move it to the side so you can produce. So I would just encourage everyone to remember, you know, we're as men, we can create things. We don't just destroy, right?
Yeah.
God, I was going to add to that. For me, that's been a big piece. You know, life after sports, I've created so long in the athletic world, you know, since a young age. And then when I was done, that piece, you know, was gone for me. And now that's been part of that new journey of, you know, what can I do? What can I create? What can I be a part of? And unfortunately for me and so many other athletes that I know, they lose a sense of themselves because that's, you know, who they are and that's all they known. And then when that's done or gone, then it's like, okay, who am I? You know, that's been my identity for so long. And that's why so many athletes, you know, in my world struggle, is because they lose that identity. And one of the things that came to mind for me, just listening to you men speak, was, you know, community. And for me now, as a male, knowing I don't have to take on this world myself, you know, I can connect and I can meet and I can interact with others that have the same ideas and concepts in mind that I want presently and then going forward in the future. And, you know, I've actually found a community called Journey. And Journey is just a group of men and women that come together, like I said, with the same ideas and the same wants and just wanting to be better individually and collectively. And for me, that's been huge as a man, because before it was like, nope, I can do it myself. I can take on the world myself. But now it's like being able to connect with other people in that community space. It's been amazing.
Yeah. I think if I can just dovetail off what Mark is saying, I think the idea that men always go about it themselves, I think it's actually needed. I think we have to do that. So then later on in life, we can understand the acceptance of community, that, you know, I always call it finding your tribe. Find your tribe that you can grow with, share with, cry with. You know, you can find that tribe and ultimately live with them and be part of them. But it's like, if we don't establish that sort of like negligence and arrogance of I can do it on myself, I am man, you'll never truly learn when you're older. And you'll never truly maybe understand. It doesn't have to be when you're older, but there has to come that point where you're like, wow, I do need people. I do need help. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to lean on a friend or lean on somebody else and say, yeah, let's do this together. So yeah, I'm spot on with that. Outstanding.
You've got me thinking about some other things that I kind of had in here, but I want to hit on this one right now because we're talking about it. How do you define vulnerability and being vulnerable?
Yeah.
Satyam, can I
Good question.
give you that one?
Be vulnerable. Good one. Well, I suppose it comes in different levels, right? There's physical vulnerability, where there's a point in our lives where we sometimes feel that we're invincible. And in this universe, we're not the strongest forces. You know, we get in a car, we drive it a little bit too fast, and you crack up that car, you're going to crack up your body. We're vulnerable. And we sometimes think that we can do everything at supersonic speeds and we're impregnable, that we'll never get hurt. But there's a physical vulnerability. And if we're not careful, sometimes people lose their lives feeling not being open to that sense of vulnerability. You know, it happens in the teenagers, 20s, different times. Something happened in my father's life also, where he felt that, you know, he could do no harm, and he did to himself. But so that sense of physical vulnerability is to say that we live in a big cosmos, and physically we're not that strong compared to all the forces that are out there, and we should be careful. And in terms of the emotional plane, our vulnerability is, you know, letting the ego chill out a little bit. You know, that not that we have all the answers and our voice needs to be heard first, and you know, it's my way or the highway, that type of thing. Your actual question was, how do we tap into that vulnerability? Was that what it was?
Well, and yeah, how do you define it, and how do you how do you utilize that or
Yeah.
find strength from it?
Yeah. I'll be brief here. With on the emotional or psychic plane, that letting go of that ego a little bit, knowing that we're here to work with others and not always to press our own agenda, and to try and step back and embrace what other people have to say and hear and feel. And this, in the spiritual realm, without embracing vulnerability, I don't think you can take one step forward. You can kind of squeak by in the physical realm and the psychic realm. You can kind of, halfway make it, but in the spiritual realm, that, what are we? We have to surrender in order to advance spiritually. And so you have to, some type of embracing that there's something greater than our own petty selves, and that that we should utilize whatever energy we have physically, psychically, spiritually, to do what we can, but know that we have of limited capacity, and we have to rely on something greater than ourselves to ultimately pull us through. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ted, how about you?
One thing I learned, and I learned a lot from my clients, but to be vulnerable, you got to put that armor down. You got to take the armor off and put it down. And when you do, you're going to notice how heavy it was while you were wearing it. Day after day after day of that, it will wear you down. And I've had a lot of really tough guys cry in my office just from the sheer weight of having to try to carry that. Open up and talk about the shit that's bothering you, man. I mean, that's really all. It's the scariest thing in the world for a lot of us. It took me years before I could get to that point. But if you do, it will pay off. You won't die alone in a dark room. You might actually die with your family around you, which is a far more beautiful and positive, life-affirming thing. It's take the armor off, man. Something's bothering you, talk about it. If you got to call somebody, if you got to call a hotline, do that. If you don't have the luxury of having a best friend that you can just lean on, there's places you can call, but talk about the stuff that's bothering you, because if you don't, eventually it will eat you up. First step in that direction is just taking all that armor off that we're taught to build up and to have. Just take it off, see how it feels, take it for a test drive, and then start talking about what you actually feel and what is actually bothering you.
Good. Donnie, how about you?
Yeah. So you gentlemen probably don't know, but so I'm 40 years old, and at the age of 37, I had a massive heart attack, known as a widowmaker, that almost took my life. And it was all from genetics. I didn't smoke and drink or do anything to that extent. But vulnerability, I learned it firsthand when I was laying in a hospital bed with a stent in my heart, learning that there's one guarantee I have in life, and that is death. And understanding that every day leading up until when that next maybe event is, that next deathly event, is precious. So understanding the uniqueness, the preciousness, the complexity of life and its daily acceptance, and to me, just embracing it and understanding life is long, but it's also temporary, and whatever pathway you choose in the spiritual world or in the mental capacity, that's up for you to decide. But for me, I understood right then and there how vulnerable I was as a man, as a father, a husband at the time. And it brought me into like an awakening. It brought me into an awakening and acceptance that I have to cherish everything. If it's raining that day, it's not a bad day. It's a great day. That rain is now giving some vital water to the plants. If I'm stuck in traffic, well, maybe something's happening that's more important than me at that time. So it's just an acceptance, saying that there's a lot of unknowns in this life, but there's one guarantee, and that's death. That's the ultimate vulnerability. We all share that. Some of us will go to different realms and different spiritual that's the guarantee we have. So that for me is the ultimate vulnerability. And knowing that, I embrace everything that comes my way. Getting to talk with all of you fine gentlemen, getting to rescue a dog from the pound, getting to watch a sunset 3 days ago at 14,000 feet. I never take it for granted, because that is just, that's what I've learned from my vulnerability as far as chasing death, which we all seem to do.
Thank you. Marcus, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Ted kind of hit it on the head. For me, it's, communication. That's the word that comes to mind as, being vulnerable in terms of, as a man, we deal with all these things and these issues and the weight of the world on our shoulders. And for me specifically, I was the type of guy that was like, you know what, I can do this myself. I can take the world on myself. And I found so much relief in communication, specifically with my wife, and just being able to, talk and release and let go of the everyday burdens that we carry as men, and it's something it's taking practice, and it's not easy. But whether it's my wife or other people that I'm connected with in the journey space, getting together and actually taking a deep dive and talking about whatever may be on your mind or your heart, it's been such a huge relief of just being able to let go. Because when you talk and you express how you feel and your emotions, for me, I learned very quickly that I believe we all have past trauma or even current trauma. And it's like, whoa, like you're going through the same thing that I'm going through, or you already have. And together, talking and expressing and communicating, I can share with you my feelings. You can do the same. Maybe someone like Donnie or Ted or Scott, obviously you've been through this, and you can actually share from your point of view or your perspective. And then it actually helps me. Like, again, it's been huge, and it's been a big change. And again, it's not easy as a man, right? But that's been a shift and a change for me is definitely the communication.
So
Yeah, I find no matter what, I always find that I have to remind myself to ask for help.
Yeah.
I credit my current job that I'm working. There's a culture there that says, ask for help and do it quickly. Like, don't wait and wait and wait. When you need help, go ahead and ask. And it was so refreshing to hear that in a professional environment, because I think a lot of times, whatever that professional environment is, there's so many times where you're thinking, oh man, I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to expose that I don't know, or like you said, Marcus, you think, I'm the only one, right? I'm alone in this issue. And you never are. There's no issue out there that you're alone in. Everyone's gone through it. We've all been there. Humanity has found a way to have that issue and get through it. So yeah, that's something that I constantly have to go back and remind myself.
Yeah.
So another aspect of vulnerability and positivity, what have you had to let go of in your view as a masculine thing? What have you had to let go of that was really hard, but then you found maybe liberation or freedom in letting it go? So let me start with, I'll let someone who wants to answer go ahead and jump in. Think about it.
I mean, a big one for me was, it's just what we were talking about, actually asking for help when you need it, rather than waiting until, things are critical and it's about to implode. That was a really big deal for me, just because, when I was growing up, the impression I got was if I couldn't fix it, that was my fault and my problem. And, I got to find a way to do it myself at all costs. So, I mean, for me, as I have aged, asking for help has been it's been a big issue that has led to really big and good things for me. just in terms of asking partners for help or just sharing what's on your mind so you don't drown with it, and just really, I can't belabor this enough, but learning to talk about your shit in a very personable and sincere, genuine way can go a very long way to making you a happy person versus a very unhappy person. I mean, that was the big issue for me. It took me till I was about 40 until I could do that even somewhat consistently. So, I mean, I've been unlearning a lot of things right up until now when I'm 51, but it has made a huge difference for me, most definitely.
Appreciate you sharing that, Ted.
Absolutely.
Who else?
One thing that comes to mind for me is forgiveness. I think back as a child, I feel like I never was taught or trained really to forgive, and whether it's friends or family members and issues come up and, you disagree or you fight or you argue. In my family, we would just rather, stop talking, and go a year or 2 years or 3 years without talking. And I look back and there's so many really stupid fights or arguments that happened. And if we could have literally just sat down and talked and communicated, and me talk about how I felt, they do the same thing, and then we meet in the middle, it really is that easy. But because of the ego, because of the pride and not being able to forgive, that's one thing that I've been working on specifically over just the last year, with friends and family members that, I love to death. But there's people that, I've went 2-3 years without talking and communicating because I didn't know how to talk or communicate or express my feelings or my anger. And so that's one thing that I've personally been working on, like I said, recently. Yeah.
That's some profound stuff. I appreciate it because I think everyone got hit when you said it, right? Everyone's been there.
Yeah.
Holding back with people you love. And you need to take the time to work it out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you.
Anyone else on letting go?
I think for me, the big kind of shift in my life was letting go that I can't control everything. I can't have my influence, my input in just everything that kind of comes around my life. And it was just accepting that the only thing I can't control is my response. So, if I'm in some sort of argument with someone or there's some sort of disagreement, my response is what they're feeding off of. And letting go that you don't need to be, you don't need to win the argument. You don't need to be first. You don't need to do this. You can just kind of let go of these things and just accept that people are feeding off of your response. And that is truly the only thing you can control. Once I kind of relinquished that and understood that in a greater picture, the little things don't bother me. There's no need for them. And it's just kind of accepting that, I control my thoughts, my actions by adjusting and, kind of living within that situation. So, and it kind of falls into line with the followings of Stoicism. I'm not sure if anyone follows that as far as some of these ancient teachings, but our response to the environment, our response to people is the only truly thing we can control. Once I kind of gave up on trying to influence and control everything, my life just got so much better. I don't want to say it was easy. Life isn't necessarily easy, but there was far less stress. There was far less my mind wandering about things that were completely irrelevant and I truly had no control over, and just accepting what was in front of me and my response to it. And life just became amazing, absolutely amazing.
Nice. Yeah.
Good.
Let me jump in on this one as well. I think from the yogic perspective, what we might come up with philosophically is this notion of attachment. What are we attached to that we find that's so critical to who we are, yet not realizing that very attachment is limiting us. I came onto the yogic path pretty early and embraced it pretty quick, but not that early. along the way, I jumped in every mud puddle I think a person could jump in. And by the time I was 23, I'm now 53, or to be 53. By the time I was 23, I was ready to hightail it onto the yogic path, and there was a lot of learning. But at the age of 20, I had the same opportunity, but I was so involved in in a way of living there. I was totally shackled. There was no way for me to embrace any type of refinement or meditation. I thought I wasn't against it, but I was in no position, to make any move in that regard. I had to let go of some of those attachments. Some of those were some of the things I may have been eating or drinking. Some of the things may have been my ways of interacting with people, the hours I was keeping, all different types of things. It needed a wholesale change in life. And when you get that a little bit, it really spurs the wheel forward, and you can make tremendous strides quickly. But first you have to kind of let go of some of those attachments, and some of them may be actual addictions, whether it be nicotine or something else. I wasn't a smoker per se, but we all have things that we kind of bump up against and realize, well, that's a little stronger than I am. I need to let go of that. But when we're able to let go of those attachments, then there's a whole freedom for us to move forward. Diet is a big thing. How foods don't make us feel well, and we adopt a cleaner way of eating, and but food choices are not easy. That's a heavy attachment. People want their go-to, and so those things, once we get a little momentum of it and we get that real sense of freedom, then the attachment goes away, whatever that may have been, and we get a little bit of momentum. And I realize I'm being a little bit general. I want to purposely keep it a little bit general, but I think that's kind of what I'd say, those habits that need to be put by the wayside so we can have scope to embrace something new.
Yeah, that's powerful. I really like that, the attachments. That's good.
One of the things that made me think about from my world of sports is, when you say attachments, the first thing that comes to my mind is how do you do that as a man? How do you let go? Because in my world, in sports, and we all love sports, and we watch football and baseball and basketball and all the different sports out there. But from such a young age, I was programmed that I had to win. It was all about winning, getting first place, winning the championship, winning the Pop Warner, football game, whatever it may be. It was all centered around winning. And so from that young age, it was all about how can I be the best to beat the other team or the other opponent. And then what I did is I carried those into life after sports, right? So I had to win the argument. I had to be right. I couldn't put the ego aside. So I guess my question is for you men, how it's easy to say, well, just put it aside or don't do that, right? But again, for me, it was programming at such a young age, and it was about winning. And so I guess, how do you do it, or how have you guys done that, learning and looking back over your journey to where you guys are at today?
Right.
As far as attachment goes, I'm still working on that. I work on that every day. I was also raised to be results oriented, and that was really all that mattered. And, when I mid-20s or so, I realized there might be other things in life than that, but it was still a very, very long time before I could let go of being results oriented literally all the time. And I still struggle with that every day. I'm willing to take feedback on a better way to do that too.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a big one. The only thing I would say is that to try and do it in small increments, the movement may be that way, but I would say that the actual change might be in small increments, but I think we have to take a wholesale look at the biggest question we can of who we are and what's meaningful. Otherwise, it's, okay, I'll switch out beer for whiskey. I'll switch out, that doesn't, it needs to say, what am I doing here? What's really meaningful? Get in front of the mirror and find out what is it. When we embrace some type of greater question, and then we can move incrementally. It's not easy to give up those attachments, and I by no means mean to think it's a constant endeavor of refinement with just the most daily things, whether it be food, relationships, money. How do we change that? And I grew up in a in a fairly upper middle class suburb, and every expectation I was supposed to do, I pretty much smashed. Means up until 21, I did it. From kindergarten to getting my bachelor's, I followed the path, and then, but after that, I was like, hold on. I did that. Now everything's up for debate at this point. And the only way for me, it needed a whole rethinking of what I felt was needed, where I grew up in a household of expectations of professional, the question is, are you going to be a lawyer? What else? There was like 3 options, right? But those types of things that whatever it is, how to overcome those expectations or attachments is to take a big step back. And sometimes that can be going to a new place, meeting a new person, or just taking that self-reflection. There's lots of different ways to do it, but I think it's got to be a wholesale look at a global shift of who we are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that comes down to more of a lifestyle change. If you're looking to cut something out of your life or kind of implement new ideas or strategies, it comes down to a grand scheme of a lifestyle change. And I live by these few simple words that I don't do things that don't make me happy. So if I'm waking up with a hangover, that does not make me happy. I'm not going to drink. And it's a cognitive process for me. This is just, how Donnie's mind and body works, that if it doesn't give me a joy, and I'm not talking a joy of like getting high or something to that extent, which I don't do, but if it doesn't make me happy, whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it's an activity or an event or something specific to my lifestyle, I don't do it. I don't try to come up with an excuse on why I'm doing it. I already know I don't like it. I'm not going to do it. And I think we fool ourselves into this really, horrible cycle on, accepting it, executing certain things, whether it's, diet, whether it's, your physical activities, whether it's your relationships. We self-deceive ourselves into believing these things to be true or to be part of our life. But for me, it's all about lifestyle change and then not doing the things that don't make you happy. Why would we do that? I know it's easy for some of us to say, maybe a job. Well, I hate my job, well, why are you doing it? Why is it? Maybe it goes to some of those attachments that Sadie was talking about earlier. If we're just looking to attach ourselves to these things and it's not giving us the piece of that happiness, what's the point?
I think you tie the happiness to the big why that Satyam was asking, because as an example, I can eat a box of donuts. That might make me happy, right? When I'm digging into those. It's not going to make me happy, right? The big why of what do I want for my health and my body, and to keep my system operating, to keep my vibration high. What am I looking to do in life? And so that can drive even deeper decisions, right, that you didn't make when you were younger, right? So there's an evolution of understanding. That's kind of what this is all leading into in the conversation, which is the older I get, the more I've seen what I consider a lot of very subtle but dangerous programming, right? So many things you're led into, and if you're not careful, you go years and years and years on this path that you don't even realize you were programmed to go on. And now you have to make a hard left and you're deep in it.
Yeah.
So my next question is, have you identified a similar situation or adopted a worldview whereby you say, I have to deprogram myself, or I have to change what I'm doing? And how did you do it? Or how are you doing it right now? Because maybe you're still, right, like me, I'm still on that path. I'm still seeing even subtle things that, right, you start to peel the onion, you ask those big why questions, and you think you got it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a second, boom, I got hit with a truth bomb and I'm actually still stuck in something I got to get out of.
Yeah.
Anyone want to jump in on that? That's a big one to tackle.
For me, it was, it's about the time that I decided I wanted to become a therapist. Like when someone explained to me that I could make money by helping other people, I thought that was fantastic. And that sounds really simplistic, but I'd hated every job I had in my 20s. And it was largely because it was all about me. What can I do? How can I be perceived as successful? How much money can I make? And, by the time I hit 29, I'm like, what am I doing? I was not very happy. So I did make some changes. I found a career counselor, took a skills test. I scored high on psychology. And, from there, I went back to school, and that was a big shift for me because I was doing things at last for people other than myself, which, although it was really hard sometimes, it was also incredibly rewarding. And it gave me a whole nother way to look at just people in general. So I'm forgetting the exact verbiage of your question, and I'm sorry about that, but giving up that old stuff and realizing it wasn't all about me, that was a big, big shift for me. And that kind of opened my life up in a lot of ways because I could do things for others and really, really enjoy it. And then, as time progressed, I got better and better at being a therapist. And, it was really fantastic for about 15 years there.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's what I've seen in this group, right, is everyone here talking has had those shifts just from hearing your stories in the short time we've been talking, right? So everyone's clearly had to change maybe their beliefs or the path they were on, or their values, what they thought was important is now, taking a back seat with new revelations. So anyone else want to jump in with how to reprogram?
Yeah, for me, again, it's the key word is reprogramming, because obviously I've been in one chapter or one journey, and then that's obviously changed. One of the things that I've been able to learn, and the way I put it into words, that's actually helped me a lot. I call it the core four, and I didn't make it up. I didn't come up with it, but again, it's called the core four. And that just means every day focusing on, number one, your body. So that's obviously, working out, eating healthy, what you're putting into your body. Number two would be being. So that's doing something such as yoga, meditation, being involved spiritually, whatever type of religion or whatever you believe in, just focusing on that every day. Again, that's being. Number three is balance. And so for me as an athlete, it's very easy to be all in 100% on one of these different areas. But again, being able to balance the time with the kids and the wife and friends and family. And so just being open and being cognitive of, okay, I don't have to go all in one area or just focus on my wife or the kids. I can actually have balance across the board in all of these areas. And then the last one is business, right? So for me, business is important, creating income, providing for the family. And again, it's so easy to be all in your work and go out and make a ton of money, but you neglect the other three areas that I just mentioned. So for me, on a regular basis, I ask myself, okay, on a daily basis, what am I doing for my body, my being, balance, and business? And for me, again, you put those into words, it really is called the core four, right? And so every day, I can sit down and literally write on paper, or even ask myself, what have I done in each four of these areas today that are obviously important to me?
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. That's practical. It needs that type of that daily checkpoint of checklist. Hey, did I get the boxes? And we're not doing it in a rote way, but in an organic way, and being honest about it, which is not always so easy to do all the time. No, I appreciate what everybody shared, no doubt. It's a struggle. It's a constant struggle. And I think the yogis bring it all back to mind, that we don't think or do any action without that first originating in the mind. And so they would look upon the source of all our words, deeds, and actions are with mind. And so then why not change that mind? Why not go right into the nucleus of our existence? And would take to the meditative process, contemplative process. And this is what Marcus is also tapping into in terms of his being, investing in that aspect of our existence, that not overlooking it for the materialistic thrust. And when we get that shift in mind, all it takes is a little shift, but it's kind of like if you point your toes 6 inches to the left and then walk, you'll reach a radically different place than if you didn't make that little shift with those toes. You could be, and so what I'm saying is that a little shift in mind, and then letting that expression take place in our words, in our deeds, in our actions, in our outlooks, in our interactions, then you've got a whole new human being there. And so that shift in mind through some type of contemplative practice that allows us to cool off the jets of the ego and our external chase, and redefine or reconsider who we are, and that mental shift. Then it's easy. The hard part is making that mental shift. It's easy to say, okay, I'll do meditation, mind changes, so be it. But we know that's tricky. But when that investment is done, when we take it seriously, then once that shift is made internally, then the rest of the expression naturally follows suit. That's what I've found. I haven't mastered it, but that's what I found. The little success I've gotten, that's where it started.
Thank you.
For me, that shift, as we've kind of been discussing, has been more of a primal connection to the natural world. We all come from it. In the simplest form, we are all beings of this planet. And for me, it was kind of reconnecting and realigning myself to the natural environment, understanding its healing properties, understanding the emotional support it gives, the primal connection, the physical relief, whether it's through food or water. Kind of realigning myself to the natural world allowed me to just kind of focus more externally as far as my relationships, my daily actions, all those things kind of manifested. Kind of more of a holistic sort of approach, just by relying more on Mother Nature, whatever you would like to call the natural world. For me, it was about going out into the natural environment, living it, breathing it, consuming from it, accepting it, reflecting within it, and that shift slowly took more of approach of lifestyle change and maintaining that lifestyle change.
Love it.
Now, we talk about it's right, divine masculinity. So there's an aspect of spirituality to this. I don't think we really, we're running out of time. I think there's probably an opportunity to continue the discussion again in the future. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
One thing I want to maybe wrap with is, the audience. You never know what kind of audience you get for these kind of exchanges. So let's think for a moment that there could be some younger men out there, or even boys that are, stumble onto this kind of stuff and information. So what would you share to help imbue, positive aspects of masculinity? What kind of information do you want to share with an audience that might benefit from your wisdom?
I'll jump on this one if you don't mind. And I'm only going to provide this from the example, and then hopefully someone's watching this. But I have two sons. I have a 14-year-old son and an 11-year-old son, and there is a social stigma that goes around, masculinity, asking for help. All these different sort of things are kind of thrown around the world. But the one thing that I constantly fall back on is not necessarily teaching them what to think, but more or less how to think. How to approach the world and all that it offers, whether it's spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. And by sticking to that, and anyone that might be watching, is that there is no single source of answer. There is no 100% this is going to work for you. Everyone's unique, everyone's an individual, and they all have their own needs, wants, and desires. And knowing that, you might pull a little bit from maybe some of my inputs or Marcus's or Ted's or whatever the case may be, but that's okay. You don't have to have a single source. You don't have to be one thing your entire life.
Yeah.
You will change. You want to change. You want to experience that change. So it's understanding that as young men watch this, my own two young men, it's guiding them in the process of exposure to life, exposure to this world, and really teaching them how to think, how this world operates. As soon as I tell them what to think, I'm impacting what they're trying to maybe achieve, right? What we've all experienced from young ages. You will do this, you will achieve success, you will be number one, you will always win. But imagine if we could reverse that and say, how does it make you feel to win? How do you want to be projected amongst your teammates? How do you want to succeed in education or in life? When we start asking those questions, we can remove some of that stereotypical, you got to be number one, you got to fight till you're blue in the face. And we can start really raising a generation of people that have bigger hearts, more understanding, but can really make a bigger impact on the world. So
yeah,
Love it.
my 2 minutes.
Thanks, Tommy.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll jump in. The advice that I would give anyone, men or women, boys or girls, I think we touched on it earlier. To me, life is a journey, good, bad, or otherwise. Just be open to learning and change, and just know that you're going to go through some good times and some bad times, and even some trauma, and what I would just encourage you to do is find a community, find men, find women, find both that you can actually talk to and connect with. And, I know I touched on it earlier. I found so much peace in my community called Journey. And, for me, I'm not pushing or trying to sell anything, but if anyone listening is looking for a community, looking for connection, where you can speak with men and women and talk about these same issues that we're talking about today, it's open to anyone, and all you have to do is contact me, and I can tell you more about the Journey space and the people and the basis behind it. But again, for me, as a man, just knowing that I can actually talk and release and let go and learn from others' experiences, it's been an amazing. So just wrapping it up in words, not having to go through this world on your own, find a community to lock arms with, and I think that it's just going to help you so much more in your journey that we call life.
Right on, Marcus. Good stuff.
Thank you.
I think if we want to influence future generations, and Donnie, I really loved what you said about teaching your kids how to think. That really resonated.
Awesome.
I think we need to teach emotional intelligence,
Yes.
especially to boys. Feel your doggone feelings. They're there for a reason. And it doesn't make you less of a male if you're feeling your feelings. It makes you emotionally intelligent. And I think we need more emotionally intelligent people, straight across the board. I would say, you know, my advice to the younger generation, start feeling your feelings. And if you're a parent, teach your little boys to feel their feelings as soon as they can express them. It's crucially important if we want to make any kind of real changes.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, yeah, all really powerful and meaningful messages. Really, really appreciate what people are putting out there. Speaking to the younger generation, the first thing I'll say to them is, we put you in a hole. You guys are gonna, what has been going on for the last few generations can't continue. It's a dead end street. And so rise to the occasion, and I think part of the way we rise is through cooperation. That, you know, what you folks were tapping into, that you can't do it on your own, and dominating others doesn't work. You know, you can't dominate the environment. You can't dominate. It leads to depletion, to destruction. You may get a little bit of a ego boost for a second, but it's going to come back and smack you in the backside and knock you over if you're not careful. And things have come to a point in the world where there's not a lot of wiggle room anymore. It needs that cooperation between communities, between cultures, between genders, between everyone. And we'll find that strength in numbers to be amazingly powerful in coming up with the answers we need to come up with, that are situations that we're butting up against that need to be solved. And so I would say, you know, be open to cooperation and feel the joy and meaning that comes in being some part of some synergetic type of experience, that the sum of the parts is greater than, or, you know, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I think because what's been going on the last few generations, you know, there are some good things, but we've put ourselves in, you know, this younger generation, they're going to have to dig hard to get out of that hole, and all the power to them. And I know they'll do it.
Certainly.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
I'll add this. I think it's easy as a boy or a young man nowadays to think that you're not loved, to not, you know, with all of the closed off emotions, all of the intense messages. You know, it's important that men understand there is, you know, a love for their situation, their struggles, what they have to go through. You know, Satyam, you hit the nail on the head. They're fighting a battle that we put them into. And so, you know, the support is there. There's lots of people who want to help. It was Mr. Rogers, right, famously said, find the helpers. And they're out there, right? We're out there. So that would be my message to add to all the great stuff you guys already provided. So, yeah, I think we're going to wrap shortly here. I'd like to give you guys some time if you have anything to share with the audience here. Many of you have activities that are worth sharing and worth making people aware of. We didn't maybe take the time at the beginning to do that. So let me start with you, Donnie.
Yeah, you know, as far as parting words, in the grand scheme, I think there's a stigma that kind of is in the social landscape that young men, even old men, all of us, it's wrong to ask for help. It's wrong to seek out guidance. Going into that emotional intelligence, I think your emotional intelligence is just as important as your IQ, if not even more important. So I think in the grand scheme, breaking that stigma of what is masculinity, it's saying you can still be masculine in many forms and ways. There's no reason that you can't stand up and fight for what you believe in. There's no reason why you can't take up a cause and stand behind that cause. but it's also understanding maybe who's on the opposite side of that cause and understanding their perspective and their approach. So I think for us, we should just break that social stigma of, you know, if you're a young man or an old man, you can't ask for help. You can't do these things because it's, you know, it's not what you're supposed to do. Me personally, I think one of the things that I hope people can walk away from this is that coming from a military background that is designed to fight in wars, and then having a shift in my life to accept and love what is around me, regardless of what is or how it is, it's doable. So if you're sitting and you're watching this thinking that you have to jump through hurdles and you have to go through all these milestones, it's very likely that that might be the pathway you take, but the juice is worth the squeeze. You know, once you can kind of accept and learn who you are, the world opens up. You meet new people. Love is easily given. Love is easily shared. And I think what we need to shift is to create a divine masculinity that is one of love, but also one that is of great values, great morals, action, and leading by example. That's really what it boils down to, is leading by example, saying that maybe the things you see on TV or in film isn't the best example. So how can we as men lead by example, not just speak it, but actually take those actions and complete those truths? So lead by example. And that's one of the things that I teach, and one of the things that I promote, and one of the things that I maintain for a lot of the courses and coursework that I do is leading by example, whether it's living long-term out in the wilds of the world, or simply reflecting in my own passions of life. I try to lead by example. And I think we need more leaders to lead by example. So,
is there a way for people to get a hold of you if they have interest in connecting?
Yeah, I'm on all social media as far as, you know, Donnie Dust. I also, my company is called Paleo Tracks. You can Google that. And then, you know, the various books that I've written and videos and, you know, TV and film and all these different things that I've been a part of, you can definitely become part of that as well. And I'm very obtainable and reachable. That's the one thing that I make sure that if someone sends me a note or a message, I will go through great lengths to be responsive as possible, because whether it's someone asking about understanding their own personal heart attack and what my recovery plan was, to understanding something maybe a little bit more holistic about the natural world and how they can go about approaching it, I make myself reachable and obtainable. If you don't hear from me from 30 days, I'm probably living in a cave. So that's the reason why. But in the grand scheme, please reach out to me, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or any of the websites that I run, the blog that I run. And we'll start chatting, we'll start talking. So yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen. Absolutely a pleasure. Absolutely a pleasure. I learned so much.
Yeah.
So much. Yeah.
Ted, any parting thoughts and ways?
Brief moment of self-promotion. I've launched my coaching practice. It's for real now. And my website went live this morning, and that's www.audaciousgrowthcoaching.com. I'm focusing on helping men learn how to communicate better, much like we have been discussing tonight. And thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciated this. We need to do a second one of these, Scott. This was good stuff.
Yeah.
Retreat. All out in the woods.
There you go.
Props. I got props.
Yeah.
How about you, Satyam?
Ted, will you spell that? Spell your website for everyone?
Sure, that's Audacious. That's AUDICIOUS growth, GROWTH, coaching, COACHING.com.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll have Lisa put it in the show notes. Right,
Thank
Lisa?
you very much, guys. Thank you very much.
Satya.
Sure. Just to piggyback on something you said, and then I'll give my contact information. You've mentioned the word love, and you know, we live in a world of tremendous connectivity, yet it's also juxtaposed by tremendous alienation. And you had said, what about what would be the message to people is that no one should feel that they're alone, you know, and it may seem simple, but sometimes, you know, that alienation, as far as we can as a humanity, we should try to eliminate that there should be a sense of cosmic brotherhood and sisterhood amongst all, and not let anyone feel forlorn. And sometimes to break that wall, to say it is not the easiest thing to do. But I think that's a battle we have to face at this point, that there is a lot of alienation, and we want to, with compassion and love, try and get everyone connected. And I appreciate you raising that point. In terms of connection, I'm pretty reachable, and I'm online quite a bit. Renaissance yoga, but who likes to spell Renaissance, right? But you can do it Ren Yoga. I got the domain name renyoga.com. I also have renaissanceyoga.com. I'm reachable through my website, and I'm on most of the social media platforms under Ren Yoga or Renaissance Yoga. And you can find me. I'm pretty responsive. Yeah, I should usually respond unless I get caught up in a cave with Donnie for a longer than expected period.
Now we're talking.
But, I usually should get back to you pretty quick. Yeah, but it's been a pleasure to meet and to speak with all you gentlemen and my brothers tonight. And I thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, I think our next one maybe will be in a cave. 5 guys in a cave. We'll have to figure out how to stream though.
That's a good show idea.
Marcus.
Yeah, very quickly. I know I touched on a few of them earlier. Kind of my old athlete cliches would be game plan. I think we talked a lot about a lot of amazing things today, but I would encourage men or women, and I'd pose the question, what is your game plan on a daily basis? I talked about focusing on your core 4, again, your body, being, balance, and business. And so what are you going to create every day to think about or to focus on those areas, if those areas are obviously important to you, which I believe they are. And so I know I drive my wife crazy, but I'm old school. I love the technology and the phones and all the things they do, but literally I have an old school planner that has Monday through Sunday on it, and I'm literally writing in my planner on a daily basis things that I need to focus on, things I want to do. That's with the wife, the kids, and obviously business and everything else that I talked about. So I would encourage you, it's one thing to listen and say, wow, those are some great things that we heard today from all the men. But again, to me, it comes down to game plan and taking action on a daily basis. The second thing I would talk about, and I know we talked about it as a group, we have a lot of negative old programming, a lot of things, whether it's for the kids or, our families today. I think it's easy to say, you know what, well, I'm this way because I was raised that way, and today as a father, my whole goal is to break those old programmings, those old habits, because if I don't, I'm just going to pass those on to my kids, and they're going to continue to do good or bad based on the way I was raised. And I think, looking back, I can say we've come a long way. Things have changed. Things have been good, things have been bad, and things have been really bad, right? But be open, again, for men and women, be open to change. Just because you were raised or you grew up in an environment or things were a certain way, I think it's so important. And obviously with what's going on in the world and the landscape, of just being open to say, you know what, I do need to make those small changes or those small tweaks, because I know it's important for me and the future generations. So those are just the last things that I want to talk about. Like everyone else, I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I love to hear from people. You can message me. I would love to get on a call, talk more in depth about journey and connection and community and how you can be involved as well. So definitely honored to be here and to listen to all you men today. And I just appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Marcus, I want to acknowledge, that the discussion is not just for men. And I appreciate you pointing out that, there's opportunities for men and women to gain from this knowledge, from this wisdom. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So Lisa had mentioned to me, Satyam, that you may, she said, I can't put you on the spot, but you may have a story to share. Is is that something you have in your pocket, so to speak, or do we save it for the next?
I
I think we're gonna have another one.
Yeah, they're I could probably come up with something. I didn't come with one specific for tonight, but there's always let me think here.
On the spot.
Yeah, okay, here's that one here. Yeah, I got one.
Okay. She said you would.
Tricky one. I didn't plan it, but I think I should be able to come up with the points. There was a pencil maker. He made the greatest pencils that were ever lived, the greatest pencils on the earth. And people came from far and wide to figure out how he could make these great pencils. They'd come, they watch him carve the wood, put the coating on, add the eraser on the end, and do all sorts of things. And they all left watching the whole process and even going in the box. And the pencil maker was thinking, what's the big deal? Pencil, pencil, well, I'm not hiding anything, come and see. And they all would watch the process and then they'd leave. And whenever they left and tried to create that pencil, they came up short. And the pencil maker himself was not withholding any information. But he would close the box after making him, and then he would open it up again. And then he would take a look and he'd talk to those pencils. And he would say, remember these things in life and you'll do just well. Every so often in life, you're going to make a mistake, but don't worry about it. You got an eraser on the other end. Just get after it and redo. Don't let stop you. He said the next thing, every so often you may experience a time in your life where you go through a little sharpening and you may not like the feel of it, but you know what? You'll come out more effective, more pointed, and you'll be better for it. So hang in there. He said, number 3, of all the things in life, remember what makes you most important, what makes you a pencil and allows you to write is what's on the inside. So never forget what's on the inside. And then last one, he said, remember, you've come into this world and your job is to express. So let yourself be guided and let that benevolent guide tap into that, and you go on writing. Write your story, write your tale, and share it with the world. And let yourself be heard and allow others to also be heard. And with those elements, they went out to become the greatest pencils that the world had ever seen. Those 4 or 5 little tips.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I've been thinking on my feet there for a while.
And that was excellent. A great way to end an amazing conversation. I want to thank all of you. You've filled my head and heart with lots of wisdom and guidance, and I appreciate it. So love and light to you. I think we'll be talking again.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Should do that for sure.
Be safe, and until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Indeed.
Best wishes to all.
Yeah. Life is long. Life is long.